it was unspoken. I think one was a touch. By her touch, I just felt just warmed, just all of a sudden just warmed and almost magically floating, if you will, by just her touch.
I mean, my favorite thing that drives her crazy is she'll be in the kitchen cutting with a knife, and I'll come up behind and hug her, and it's like, what is this thing about? Because she doesn't expect it.
But something that she just does, and this is kind of corny probably, but what the heck. You know, she'll rub my head, and just something small like that is a really intimate thing where we connect in a special way.
And sometimes even I think, you know, even if we've missed it all day long or we haven't hardly seen each other, there's, you know, it goes from work to after school activities to basketball games, and it's 9 o'clock before we get home at night. There's something about a routine that we have, you know, and it's even, you know, Corey, you know, opening his arms every night and I'm laying my hand on his chest. And even if that's all that happens, that's something that happens every single night.
It's really important when he just comes up and gives me a hug, or you know, he can tell when I'm just really down or having a bad day, and he just comes and puts his arm around me and gives me that encouragement, and it really blesses me a lot. So
I just absolutely love it. I could sit there and have her, you know, scratch my head and run her fingers through my hair for days. I just absolutely love it.
We hold hands all the time.
And she came in to the bedroom and said she was getting ready to go off, and she just gave me this hug that said so much, you know, in an embrace.
We'll, you know, lay on his chest probably for at least 20 minutes before we go to sleep, but I think that's become precious to us.
You know, and just that touch is special to me, and I think that's, yeah, I don't know how else to put it.
Ending the day together, even without words, or I just lay down, I just take a deep breath, and it's just like, okay, you know, it doesn't matter what happened all day long, you know, it's just, you know, I was there finishing it with him.
And the other, you know, the physical touch. You know, I'm a guy. What guy doesn't have physical touch up there as a top two, right? I think we're wired that way, probably.
For you to come in and give me, you know, a hug like it was intentional, and that meant something. I mean, I really felt loved in that moment, you know, and it was not just a, you know, a drive-by hug. I mean, you held on to me for an extra moment, and I think I could hear your heartbeat there, you know. My head was.
Please join me in welcoming our guest speakers for this evening, Holly and Corey Odell. I was just tickled to have them come and join us for this, and I'll tell you, I have admired them. For one, if you don't know already, Holly is my baby sister, and so I have seen them in their marriage, you know, growing up and growing through it and transitioning, and I've just admired the love and appreciation that they have for each other. And I could honestly, there is any one of these talks, I would be tickled to listen to them share it. Whether it is words of affirmation that they have for each other, whether it is acts of service and all the sacrifices that I see them doing for each other, and fortunately for us, their love language, one of their strongest love languages for each other is physical touch. And so I was just tickled to be able to have them come and share that love language with us this evening. So looking forward to hear more of what they had to share. So I'll turn it over to you guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Rob. How's everybody doing tonight? Great to see everybody. Apologies for missing last week. We were a little bit under the weather, the whole family, and we're back tonight. And we were really disappointed to miss out last week. So, as Brother Rob mentioned there, we're going to talk to you guys about physical touch, love language number 5. And Holly and I have the blessing tonight to speak to you about what we believe to be one of the most amazing gifts of marriage. And that is the act of physical touch with your husband or wife.
As Gary Chapman tells us, there is emotional power in love and physical touch.
Many research projects have concluded that babies who are held and kissed and snuggled develop a healthier emotional life over those who do not receive the same. One of the statements from the book that I really resonated with and loved is that a tender hug communicates love to any child, but it shouts love to the child whose primary love language is physical touch. And I think the same is true for us adults. We all know how important physical touch can be in our marriages. It can literally make or break a relationship if one or both spouses hold physical touch as a primary love language. And when a spouse's primary love language is physical touch, they appreciate all forms of touch, from holding hands, simple brushes, touches on the arm, hugs and kissing, and all the way to God's most sacred or physical touches, that is sexual intimacy in marriage.
And I think from page 1 of the chapter of physical touch, Dr. Gary Chapman expresses physical touch as, quote, a way of communicating emotional love. So tonight we'll focus our discussion on that same definition of physical touch. A way of communicating, or if we expound on it a little bit, of expressing love, of expressing care, of expressing compassion. But first, we want to share a little bit about us. So this year, Holly and I will celebrate our 25th wedding anniversary. Quarter of a century, that's amazing. We have 5 amazing children and love our marriage and are humble before God for the gifts that He's given to us.
While you were here, we'll hear glowing reports of an amazing relationship. Like all couples, we have fumbled and fought, and even have experienced deep challenges in our marriage. We get into these seasons of just blah, you know, where the valley seems deep and you wonder how on earth you're going to get to the next peak. And we struggle to find our way back to those intimate spaces with one another. I think every couple should feel comfortable with the idea that marriage is more of an up and down and peaks and valleys. In our marriage, I feel like we've had way more peaks than valleys, and the peaks seem to get higher and more beautiful as we grow and learn together. And I'm so thankful for that.
Amen. So right now, let us take you back in time a bit, if we may. The year was 1991 in Hamilton, Montana. The Bitterroot Valley. Some of you guys probably know that area, been down that area. That's where I grew up, and Holly moved there in the early 80s. And that's where we met. 1991, and we've been dating for a few months, since December of the previous year, and we were falling in love. And we were in love, and it was amazing. I remember the time we were inseparable. We did everything together. And excitedly, we were thinking about a future together. Holly was a senior in high school, and I was working full-time in the local lumber yard. And every day I remember after work, looking forward to our evenings together. And we cherish those moments and those memories even today. And actually had a scrapbook that we had the forethought back then. This is amazing. To put together to capture those thoughts, those feelings, those photographs, the things that we did. And just capture our love blossoming today. I wish we still did some of that today. Weekends were spent together. We went skiing and sledding. We went fishing. We watched movies for hours, nestled together on the couch. And we just enjoyed falling in love. We had both found what we were looking for, and it was beautiful. I remember that spring came, May or April, and Holly asked me to take her to the prom. And who was I to say no to that? Back in the early 90s, I think every prom at that time had something to do with under the sea and treasure chests and seahorses, the enchantment under the sea dance. Who here went to one of those, back in that time frame? So remember here, we're time traveling a little bit. Back to the Future movies, Michael J. Fox, very popular then. They were playing real heavily on every VCR in the country. I remember us watching a few of those. You remember when George McFly asked Lorraine to dance in the movie? He just knocked out Biff Tannen out in the parking lot. Guess what, guys? Holly and I were there too. We were there at that dance. We got pics to prove it. Ours wasn't the enchantment under the sea dance, but it was close. Yeah. So yeah, I was saying we got pics to prove it. Guys probably remember that scene, Michael J. Fox rocking out to Johnny Be Good and some others, right? There's George McFly and Lorraine out there dancing. If you guys look hard, you can see us out there. We're out there in that picture. Actually, here's a picture of us after the dance. If you look close, that fish up there on that wall, he's even mesmerized by my. But, big 80s and early 90s hair aside, and in all seriousness, we cherish this picture. It's on my nightstand even today. And why? Because to both of us, it captures just how in love we were. Even today, I can look at that picture and instantly re-feel so many of the feelings and emotions I had for this girl, Lynn. I can look at her eyes in that picture and I can see the love, the joy, the happiness, the contentment, and the security that Holly felt in me and in us. And that is awesome and precious to me today. With regards to physical touch, I still remember to this day one of the most impacting occurrences of physical touch that I've ever had in my life, and it came in those precious early months of Holly and I's courtship. I remember getting off work one night, like Monday, Tuesday night probably, it's dark, middle of winter, and been hauling lumber all day in sheetrock into one of the latest, example of a Bitterroot mansion that was going up. Any of you guys or gals has ever hauled 5/8 by 12-foot sheetrock all day? You guys know what that's like. You get some Popeye forearms out of that. But I was exhausted. My whole body ached, I remember that. And especially my forearms were just almost numb. But I still wanted to see my girl that night, so I parked the truck and walked into where she worked at the Roxy movie theater on 2nd Street North in Hamilton. And there she was. Holly was behind the counter, counting out the till, and greeted me with those amazing blue eyes of hers and that heart-melting smile. The place was empty and she was closing up, and as I stood there somewhat dazed by the day, she came around the corner and while walking to the ticket office, came near me and just momentarily placed her warm, soft hand on my forearm in the most loving and tender manner I'd ever experienced, and said that she'd only be a few more minutes. And I tell you guys, you could have knocked me over with a feather right there. I was just overwhelmed. I felt like I'd been touched by an angel, and never before had I sensed such sweetness, kindness, softness, and caring from someone else to me. That expression of love through physical touch was exactly what I needed right then. It was amazing how much energy I got off of that. It was amazing that it went on to shape our marriage for years to come. So with that, I related one of my first deep, true experiences with feeling love, and that was through physical touch. I didn't understand it at the time. Obviously, the book hadn't been written yet, I don't think. But over the years, I've come to realize that physical touch is one of my primary love languages.
I think we both have realized, and Gary spent some time on it in the book, that for a spouse whose primary love language is physical touch, it's easy to feel unloved and disconnected if the husband and wife are apart for a time or have not been intentional about expressing their love through physical touch. Personally, in our relationship, I can just about always pinpoint when our communication starts to break down and when we start to struggle. And most often it's just a direct result of not having that time to sit together and hold hands and or talk and just be close to one another. It is just one of those hinge points that you can just see every single time that when we start to bicker a little bit or get a little bit on edge, it's just obvious. It's so obvious.
Yeah, and even worse, if allowed to go on for a time, we might even start digging up some of our own insecurities we have in ourselves or in our marriage. As with any of the love languages, when our spouse speaks our love language passionately, with tenderness, our security in our marriage and in ourselves skyrockets. Gary goes into more detail in the book about ways to express loving touches. I think it's also important to note that learning what your spouse likes and dislikes are is just as important and shows that emotional love and care. Over the 25 years Holly and I have been married, I think we've grown to understand each other's needs, desires, and dreams. Any of you that know us know that we're always holding hands or standing close to each other, right?
Yeah.
We're seated together, I've got my hand, or got her hand in mine, or our arms are touching. At home, I'm often rubbing her shoulders or stroking her hair, or just doing something to show her that I'm present. As a matter of fact, when the kids know where Dad's seat is, and when Mom's sitting down on the couch or whatever else, we make a point of asking our child to move so we can have that time together. 15 minutes a night or whatever else.
I don't even think you have to ask them anymore. I think that they just know where Dad's seat is, and if Dad comes into the room, it's, move it on over.
And I guess it's something that we realize that physical touch is one of the building blocks of our marriage. We know that it is when one of us has had a bad day, all of that can be wiped out with just some intentional time of being physically close with one another. We have had time to understand, to come to figure out what works well in our marriage. And we figured out that by expressing love to each other, by frequently touching the other, or just being close, being in that space with each other, it just simply works for us. It makes all other aspects of our marriage better. The Bible says in Matthew, for this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. And Holly and I believe there can be a great strength in marriage if a husband and wife gratefully and yet gracefully view themselves no longer as two, but just as one. And that his body is no longer just his own, but hers as well. And that her body is no longer just her own, but his. No longer two, but one, just like Jesus said.
I agree. I think that another one of our secrets to success is that we have just developed habits of physical touch. And as you heard Corey describe some of them, just being sitting close together and holding hands, or he's touching my shoulders, and as you heard on the video, that's probably my favorite habit at bedtime, is knowing that Corey usually beats me to bed, and he's waiting there, extending his arm, and it's just become something that even started in the last few years. It hasn't been in our whole of our marriage, but it's something that we're just very grateful for, and that habit has just become really special to us. And like we said, even if it's only for a few minutes, it connects us. And I was reading the scripture, Psalms 91, that scripture of, he will cover you with his feathers, he will shelter you with his wings. His faithful promises are your armor and protection. And I feel that way with him. And so our physical touch has given us an incredible security together. And I love that, it's without saying any words, it says, our touches say, I missed you. I need you, I'm so glad we're in this together. You know, so not only do our touches, they just speak volumes when we learn to touch each other in that way. So it helps us stay connected, definitely, in the busiest of times.
Well, that's it. I mean, some mornings we go our different ways like you guys do, 6 a.m. And we may not see each other again until 10 p.m., right? So we found that, having this intentional time where it's just, even if it's 15 minutes before you drift off in the la la land from exhaustion and sleep, we've really found a great benefit by taking that time and that space and just calling it our own and just being still with each other.
If your marriage is suffering from a lack of physical touch, I think it's a great place to start. Just looking at what kind of habits can you form in your marriage. And that, most of those remain outside of the bedroom, rather than in.
And for you men, that means also developing those loving touches, take it on as a challenge to develop a loving touch for your wife that doesn't have strings attached to it. There's no stipulations. This is an act of sacrifice for her to show that love and say, I'm not after anything in particular, I'm just here for you and I want to love on you.
Let her walk away occasionally.
Yeah.
It's not a bad
Right.
idea. When I first read this book about 5 years ago, I would have said that physical touch was number 3, probably for me. And I'm not quite sure where it's at. They're pretty equal, 1 or 2, but I realized how impactful it is in every other area of our marriage. Most of our deep, meaningful connections happen when we've been intimately close. I feel most connected to my husband when we've been intimately close. I feel most vulnerable to share with him my thoughts and where I'm at or how I'm feeling when we've been close. And I have a funny story, and I wasn't sure if I was going to tell it or not.
Yeah, let's share it.
I'll share it. For our 20th anniversary, we went to Hawaii, and we've been on a plane one time before that for work. We have 5 children. We had no money. We've never gone anywhere. We're home buddies totally, and Hawaii was a huge deal for us. And we cried when we left our home and our kids and headed to the airport. That is how uncomfortable that we were. I started, then he followed. Sorry. And so we get to Hawaii. We have a great start to our trip. Everything's going well, and we struggled. We struggled to have conversation. We struggled to really connect. I mean, it was awkward. And I'm like, oh boy.
Well, it was a 5-star hotel.
Oh.
Then you got a couple Montana bumpkins trying to figure out how to act. You got people that want to move your luggage.
You don't have to tell that story.
No, that was great though. You're supposed to let them do it. You're not supposed to help them. Just let them do it.
I helped, and the guy looked at me funny.
It was awesome. But yeah, we felt like fish out of water.
But, and after we were well into the second day, and it's probably 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I think I'm in tears at that point because I want this to be the best trip ever for him, and he wants this to be the best trip ever for me, and we're just like, we don't want to talk about the kids because we have, this is supposed to be our time, and I finally said to him, you know what? Let's just do what we do best. Let's start there. So that's the really embarrassing part. But once we took that action, and it changed the whole dynamic of the rest of the week. So I mean that is, you're laughing, yeah. So
everything got a lot easier.
Yeah. There was no longer any struggle. There was no longer any. What are we going to talk about? Where are we going to go? What are we going to do? It was just. It didn't matter. Whatever we wanted to do, we would go and do. So it breaking down the walls is an amazing part of that. So physical touch can be a powerful catalyst for just moving from one space that you might be in to another one with your spouse. And
so lastly, wherever you are in your marriage, the challenges you may be facing, there is hope. There's hope. And we hope to encourage you to hit that reset button if you need to make a new commitment, to try some new things, take some risks. God created marriage, and Holly and I heard it said, or actually Holly heard it said recently, after God created all of creation, his final act of creation, his crowning achievement, the cherry on top. The amazing thing is marriage. It's precious. Right? And if I can, I'll read out of Genesis real quick, chapter 1. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. And God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. And with that, we'd like to just pray right now. I think we can actually go to prayer. And if we can pray with you guys, we'll just pray. Let's just do that right now. Father God, we just pray that the content of this chapter tonight is for all the marriages out there, and Holly and I too. We just pray that maybe it's made you think of a physical touch, maybe in a little different way. And there's a real gift there, Father God. We walked through it tonight with gifts that you've given us, Father, and blessed our marriage with. And we just pray and pray that coverage and that joy of physical touch, whatever it is, whatever it means in your marriage. We just ask you to bless each marriage right now in this space tonight, Father God. And we say this in your name, amen. Amen. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Corey and Holly. I appreciate it so much sharing something like that. It's not easy to come up here and share some of that on physical touch. It's probably especially not easy when your big brother's sitting in the audience and we have to hear about prom night and all that else. But it's all good. It's all good. I found that there were some really cool things that Gary shared at the end of the chapter, as well as what Holly and Corey had shared. I think one of the ones that just impacted me the most as I was looking at that, when you're in a crowded room and your spouse comes up and puts their hand on your shoulder. Something as simple as that tells you that nobody else in the room matters. They are singling you out in spite of everyone else that's present. And cool little things like that you can do to just share love and physical touch. So we're going to take some time right now. We're going to look at a couple of those questions, and then we'll get back together for our last talk for tonight.
Okay, how y'all doing?
Good.
Good to see all your faces. So we have the topic of love is a choice tonight. I guess that can be kind of good or bad, so hopefully you'll take it as good. So today we've kind of bought into the myth that love is uncontrollable, that it's something that just happens to us. In fact, even the language we use implies the uncontrollability of love. We say, I fell in love, like love is some kind of a ditch or something. Of course, when a relationship is new, it's fun and it's enjoyable, dating and being dated and courted. And in the beginning, we're constantly thinking about that new person and what we can do to bless them. And we want to spend all of our time together and share new experiences. We want to show how we feel by getting cards or flowers, maybe just sending a cute text.
Feelings, however, can be fleeting. No one seems to want to talk about how those loving feelings can fade, that it takes work to keep the love alive, and that choosing to stay in love is a choice we must all make. Who we love is as much of a choice as it is a feeling. Staying in love takes a commitment. After the rosy glow of the new relationship wears off, we have to make a decision. Do we want to love this person and commit to a relationship together, or are we going to let this person go?
Well, once we've made the decision that we found the person that we want to be with, and we commit to them, and then the work begins. A big part of that work is making many other choices. It's a choice to see the good in our spouse every single day. Rather than being focused on the negative things that can bother us, he left the tooth off, cap off the toothpaste, or the toilet paper went the wrong way or whatever. We have to accept them and love them just as they are. If we go into a relationship thinking that we can change someone, we're setting our relationship and ourselves up to fail. We all have flaws and quirks and are weird in some way. Actually, those differences are part of love. My husband told me when we started dating that he was a reject, that he was different and faulty, but it was those differences that made me fall in love with him. You know, he accepted me for who I was. How could I not accept him for who he was? Trying to change our spouse into something that they're not is one of the biggest mistakes that we can make in our relationships.
When we are unhappy with how things are in our relationship, it is easy to overfocus what we are not getting from our relationship. Instead, a healthier response is to see what we could be doing for our spouse. Rather than focusing on what they're not doing for us, we should always try to be supportive of our spouse, because we cannot expect anything from our spouse that we are not willing to give ourselves. Another important choice we can make is to choose to remember the reasons why we committed to that person. Our relationship will not always be pleasant, and there will be times for serious discussions and disagreement. There will be trying times and even bad times that we will need to work through together. The key to surviving these times is to remember to be respectful, acknowledge our commitment, and work through whatever is at hand together. During these times, it really helps to remind ourselves why we chose to love them in the first place.
When we choose active expressions of love in the primary love language of our spouse, we create an emotional climate where we can deal with those conflicts and forgiveness can be experienced. Though our spouse's love language may not come naturally to us, it's important that we make the choice each day to fulfill our spouse's needs. If we know our spouse's primary love language and we choose to speak it, it is his or her emotional needs that are met, and they will feel secure in the love of that relationship, and thus the love tank will be full, and hopefully conflict will be less. When we are in a place of emotional contentment, then both of us can focus our creative energies on being productive in other ways, such as serving others, raising a healthy, happy family, and striving to keep the balance in life which will allow us to keep our marriages exciting and ever growing. Love is all about choices. We choose to see the good, ignore the petty, look for what we could do for our spouse, and remember why we love them. Choosing to put the effort to do these things is what love looks like. And with that work comes the wonderful reward of staying in love.
1 Corinthians 13, if I speak in the tongues of men and angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or clanging cymbal. You see, it either be me or Paul who wrote the love chapter speaking to you. If I were to speak to you without caring about you in your relationship as married couples, I would just be up here making noise. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and have all knowledge, and if I have the faith that can move mountains but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. I can know all the mysteries of the universe and share with them all with you. I can have the deepest faith and be able to move mountains with a word, be the most generous person in the whole world and give you everything. Yet, if I were to do anything without love, the love of God that God has given me, the love He wants me to share with you, if I do not possess that, I am nothing.
Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no records of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but it rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Be kind in your marriages. Put your spouse first. Learn to forgive easily and forget. Don't keep things inside. Do not keep a mental list of wrongs. Rejoice in the love that God has given for you to share with each other. Hope in it, trust in it, protect it, keep it safe and sacred.
Love never fails, but where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when completeness comes, what is in part disappears. When I was a child, I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put off the ways of childhood behind me. For now we see only reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall know fully, even as fully I am known. And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. It's important to have love as think of love as a choice, because true love does not demand. And in your marriage, when you put the other person first, and then you have no expectations, then you're giving without expecting in return. And see, true love, like God gives to us, there's no expectation in return. And when you come to that place in your relationship and you put your spouse first, then they put you first, and you're always uplifting the other person. So if you're trying to manipulate your spouse to fill a need in your life, you're never going to fill it. But when you fill their need, they're going to overflow and minister back to you. But I made that decision early in life because my parents got divorced as I was a child. My mother got divorced 3 times, and I didn't have that example before me. But I made that choice that I would put my spouse first, and that I would be number 2, and then my spouse would be number 1. Of course, God is first. But in our relationship, by putting her first, even when I'm upset, even when I disagree with her, I'm not taking that emotion out of her. I'm going back to God and praying, saying, Lord, I'm upset. What am I supposed to do? And when you do that, then when you're communicating with your spouse, you're not reacting, because you're making that choice to put them first, regardless of what happens. And when you do that, you're not driven by emotions as much. And then they feel secure because they know if they do something that's not right, that you're not going to lash at them in anger. And then there's a trust, because of security, because they feel that comfort and that love, and they know that they're cherished.
And because Mark chose to do that in our relationship, I can honestly say we've never had a fight, because he refuses. He just refuses to do that. He always will walk away and pray about it. And by setting that example, I think very early on in our relationship, then I took that lead as well, and we just really would discuss things and take the time to, have that sit down, and we might disagree, but it would never come to a fight because we chose not to do that.
And my colleague, we're celebrating 25 years this Christmas Eve as well. And yeah, the first year of marriage was bumpy because we still had to learn things about each other, but by making that choice and things that happened in her past that had left scars in her, then she felt the trust because she knew that I was never going to lash out at her. And it allowed her hurts of her past to heal. And God has designed the marriage that when your spouse has gone through things, that you're the comforter, and God allows you to be the tool to heal them, and that love fills that void. And I look at being married almost 25 years, there's a depth in the relationship now that was not back there in the beginning. And it's not something that happens that you strive, but I look at all the tests and trials and life that's happened, and if you allow it, God uses the difficult situations to draw you closer together. And that time when you're just sitting on the couch, or you're just driving down the road together, there's that special bond, that time of security and peace, and there's that, but because you've made that choice, it becomes easier because you're not forcing, it just happens.
Thank you, Mark and Terry. Man, love is an absolute choice that we have to make, and I loved how they brought that point home, that we need to find ways to put our spouse first in our relationship. I appreciated the story also that Gary Chapman shared in the book, how much he hated vacuuming. And he thought, well, I'm going to get married and my wife is going to do the vacuuming. And apparently she hated it as much as he did. But he chose to do it. He chose to do it. And what he said was, when his wife saw him vacuuming, she knew it was an act of love that he was doing for her. And man, if you can find those things, I would really challenge you. What is it that your spouse does not like doing? Can you rise to the occasion and maybe pick that up from them? That's an act of love. So, or something to think on there. You know, maybe it's walking the dog. I don't like walking the dog, or so many things. But we're going to take some time and we're going to discuss it, and I'm only going to give you enough time to answer 2 of those questions. Maybe pick the bottom 2 on the list, and we'll try and get you out of here then. So thank you. We are going to close it out at this point in time, and hope you guys are enjoying it. And next week, so it's our final night coming up next week. Our last 2 chapters. We've got Zach and Kelly, who haven't spoke yet. They're gonna have an opportunity to come up here and share on chapter 11, and then Pastor Larry and Rena are gonna take a tough talk on chapter 12 that we'll go over on loving the unlovely. And we're gonna spend a little bit of time next week, and we want to get some feedback from you. In the Army, we called it an after-action review, and kind of hear some critique and of if we do this again, what can we do to make it better? Because we're thinking we might want to do this again. So.
Many thanks to those people.
Yeah. We're gonna. Yeah. I'm probably gonna pass around a card or 2 next week for our ladies who and 2 of the gals just have come in on their time ahead of. They're not even a part of the evening. They're a big part of the evening setting up for it, but they aren't with us here in the room. And I'll probably pass around 2 cards, and we might even send them out for a romantic dinner or something like that. Them and their spouses, because they've not done a great job. It's been wonderful. That's a real act of love there for our. That's been neat. I'm going to ask Pastor Larry at this point in time maybe he'd come up and close us in a word of prayer.
All right, well, it really has been a blessing, you know, in my world to see all of you and hear some of the accounts. Have you enjoyed thus far the thing? Do you feel like any lights have come on? Anybody? One light? Yeah. One light and a series of dim bulbs. Well, anyway, I hope it has been meaningful. Yes, I see that light. Are there others? All right, well, let's pray. Father, thank you for your love and mercy and grace. Thank you for your word. Thank you for those that have shared with us from their hearts and what insights they have shared out of the forge of life. And Lord, I pray for each of us that are here that you would help us to have a heart for you. You'd help us to have a heart for our spouse. You would help us to grow and mature and develop and put the other first. And as we give, that we would then be able to receive. As we sow, as we plant, we would be able to reap. But we would be more concerned about giving than getting, and more concerned about planting than the harvest. But that you would bring the increase in all of our lives. As we go from here, I pray for your protection And I pray for each family that's represented here. Pray for the children of those that are here, that you would help each of us to have wisdom to raise them in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, and that they themselves would be able to grow and mature and develop in the faith. In Jesus' name. Amen.